We're about a week and a half away from Thanksgiving, but Seattle fans already have something to be thankful for. Their management is not sitting on their hands.
You are Locked On MLB, your daily MLB podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, baseball fans, and welcome to Locked On MLB, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. And thanks so much for making Locked On the number one sports podcasting network. Number one, that's right. Yeah, bigger than whatever other sports podcasting network you're thinking about right now. We've got them. I'm your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully. Follow us at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter or whatever they're calling it these days, and on Instagram. I'm your pal Sullivan, Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram, but the best way to get a hold of us is to just use the hashtag EverydaySully and write a comment here down on the YouTubes. Today's episode is brought to you by our good friends over at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. And let's do the trivia question, shall we? It was a trivia question I had for the show. I think it dropped either Friday or Thursday. I can't remember. I took the weekend off. Forgive me. Born on this day, the day I posted the show, was the first pitcher to win a postseason MVP award without getting a decision or a save in the series. Name him. And Jared T. Hughes, who I believe is an everyday Sully, let me know if you are one if next time you answer, got it correct. It was Curt Schilling. Kurt, maybe you just looked up who was born that day. But Curt Schilling in the 1993 National League Championship Series pitched great baseball for the Philadelphia Phillies in one of the truly stunning postseason upsets I ever saw, because the Atlanta Braves were playing on a different level that year. And Curt Schilling pitched two remarkable games in that series and didn't get the win in either of the games because Mitch Williams blew both of the saves, but wound up getting the victory. So Mitch Williams got two victories in that series, and Curt Schilling got no wins, got no losses, and got no saves, but was the MVP of the series. And there were people, when he won that in 1993, were like, well, wait a minute, he didn't get the win. How could he get the blah, 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 blah? Thank goodness. You know, some old school thinking is great. Great. And some old school thinking stinks. And the obsession over the win stat is one that I'm glad that we have really moved beyond. I'm just going to, right now, he pitched 16 innings, two games where he threw 8 innings each. He struck out 19 batters and walked 5, and he allowed 3 earned runs. So he had an ERA of 1.69 over 16 innings, 19 strikeouts, no wins, no losses, no saves. Curt Schilling was indeed the MVP. The only victory he got that entire postseason was in the Game 5 of the World Series, where he threw a complete game. It was basically like, quit putting Mitch Williams in there. So anyway, that is the answer to the question. Hey, well, a lot of people are focusing on the pain and misery that happened to the Toronto Blue Jays at the end of the World Series. But lest we forget, the Seattle Mariners got a nice kick to the fruit stand this postseason as they got closer than they ever got in their entire history to a trip to the World Series. They got within 5 outs of the World Series. They have never played in the World Series. Was it 5 or 4? I don't know. They were in the 8th inning, and they had recorded at least 1 out. I'm doing some of this from memory. And it looked like the Mariners were about to punch their ticket to the World Series for the first time in their history. And then the Springer home run happened, and file it under yikes. And the Seattle Mariners, who won that unbelievably exciting winner-take-all Game 5 against the Detroit Tigers. God, this was a really great postseason, wasn't it? A lot of great games, a lot of do-or-die games, a lot of exciting games, a lot of teams dusting themselves off on the verge of elimination. And the Seattle Mariners, well, we kind of forgot about their pain when the focus came about with the what happened with the Toronto Blue Jays. But now they go on. There's a little bit of like, if not that team, then which team? Cal Raleigh was amazing, and they have a solid team going into next year. And it helps the fact that the Astros, who, by the way, looked like they had a good shot of winning the West anyway, they may take a regression. We're not sure what's going to happen with the Texas Rangers. The A's play in Sacramento, and we don't know what the hell is going on there. And the Angels are the Angels. They can't put together a winning season if they had Shohei Ohtani and Mike Trout. So Seattle still has a good shot of winning the division, but they also faced a really difficult situation, and that is J.P. Crawford is the only infielder they had guaranteed going into this upcoming season. Suarez, Polanco, and Naylor were all potential free agents. And it became clear that they needed Naylor was the one player they have to resign because he fit perfectly in with the Mariners when he was acquired. And he brought energy to the team, and he's at that right age, and he gives them everything that the team needs. And they needed to do something. And Mariner fans should be happy because the first big signing of this offseason was indeed Josh Naylor. Josh Naylor signed to I believe this is according to Jeff Passan at ESPN. He needs to pass the physical, but he's going to sign a 5-year deal. And here's the reason why I think this is big news for Seattle fans. It shows that the management is serious. It shows that not only are they serious, they're willing to get stuff done early. Naylor's a free agent for what, an hour? And right away, boom, they recognize that putting him in the fold is a big, huge honking piece to the puzzle there. Now, you have Polanco and you have Suarez. Are they going to bring both of them back? Are they going to get into the Bregman sweepstakes? I think the fact that they know their window of opportunity to win is right now. And they do have a solid team. They do have a winnable division. They know that if they get into the postseason, they've got a good shot. And they almost damn well won the American League pennant this year. They were up 2-0. They won the first 2 games in Toronto, and then they wet the bed. They nearly lost all 3 at home. They had the big comeback in game 5, and then they dropped the final 2 in Toronto, which stung. But the Mariners are clearly taking it seriously. I love it when a team's front office recognizes a problem, and they know that if they lost Naylor, they're probably not going to get into the Alonso bid. And while there's always a bunch of first basemen who are available, Naylor was that perfect fit. And the team really, and did I mention really took off with his acquisition. Came in from the Arizona Diamondbacks after a bunch of years in Cleveland. He had a very good all-around year. And he just fit the team like a glove. And you just know that sometimes there's a player who's brought in, like even in midstream of a season, that works so well that it's like, you know what? We can't let this go. If the Mariners had won the American League Championship Series, there's a real good chance he would have been the MVP. He had the 3 home runs. He batted .417. His OPS was 1.273 in the 7-game loss, and got some big hits throughout the year. He's 10 hits in the series against Toronto. And if you are a Mariner fan, you can say, okay, this is for real. And sometimes getting that out of the way early shows, okay, we know we filled that hole. Now what? Is Suarez the right fit to put onto the team? Is Polanco the right fit to put back on the team? Should they get in the Bregman situation? Should they jump face first into some of the other infielders that are out there, or should they just try to get the band back together? But you're going to have Raleigh. You're going to have a Rosarena. You know you're going to have Julio Rodriguez. Now you have Josh Naylor. Clicking on all cylinders, especially if they bring back Polanco or they bring back Suarez. Now remember, Suarez didn't have a great reunion with them, and so maybe they should jump in the Bregman feast. But they have good starting pitchers. They've got Munoz is a terrific closer, and if Wu is healthy and Castillo is healthy, and if they get something good from Bryce Miller or Kirby or whomever, Logan Gilbert, they have depth in their pitching staff. They may have had chaos in their infield, but now they know they've got Crawford and Naylor. Now fill in second base and third base, and you could take a good long look and say that this Mariner team is going for it. And if you're a fan of a team, especially one who knows they have a window of opportunity to give the Mariner fans something some of them, I'm guessing, thought they would never have a chance to see, which is a pennant, and they still haven't seen it. It still hasn't happened. But you know what? Give management credit so far, because as of this recording, they're at least trying. All right, let's hear from our good friends over at Game Time. And the NFL season is back, and honestly, there's nothing better than being at the stadium surrounded by fans and cheering on your team. Let's be honest, getting tickets can be a hassle. Between the long lines, the login screens, and prices jumping at checkout, it is frustrating, but that's why I use Game Time, that app that gives the advantage back to the fans. Game Time is fast, it's easy, and it's backed by that Game Time guarantee. You'll always get 100% authentic tickets delivered on time at the best price, plus all the fees are included, so the price you see is the price you pay. And you know what? If you use Game Time, just with a couple of taps, you can get great deals. We're talking about seeing your favorite NFL games for as low as $100. And the app is super simple. You can see the exact view from your seat while you're buying it. And you get the zone deals. Pick a section, Game Time will pick your seats. And you save big. It's faster, it's cheaper, and less stressful than any other way I've bought tickets. Now, download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time. When? Do you what? Do it today. By the way, thanks again so much for making Locked On. The Locked On Podcast Network is the #1 sports podcasting network, and I'm loving that. Hey, baseball did something the other day that I've been begging them to do, and they're getting closer and closer to what they should be doing. They had an award show. They had an award show that was hosted by Roy Wood Jr., who is absolutely one of the funniest comedians on the planet Earth. Go watch his terrific specials, terrific, I think it was on Netflix, but either way, he's got great comedy specials. He's really one of the best comedians working today. He is a phenomenal talent, a comedian of substance. He does great jokes and makes great points. He's fantastic. And he hosted the show with Mookie Betts. Mookie Betts of the Dodgers. Why can't the Red Sox get players like Mookie Betts? And they awarded some awards like Comeback Player of the Year and the Reliever of the Year, and they had some awards on there. And it was okay. It wasn't great. I happen, by the way, I happen to be a fan of award shows. It is, I don't want to say a guilty pleasure, because I don't think we should feel guilty about things that give us pleasure unless whatever gives us pleasure harms someone else. If what gives you pleasure is harming someone else, you should feel guilty. But if you're watching a show, like I know some people like reality shows. I don't really like reality shows, but if you like reality shows, like them. If you like baking shows, like them. Game shows, like them. Telenovelas or soap operas or, pro wrestling, whatever you watch. For me, it's baseball. And really, for me, along with baseball, I love the Academy Awards. And those are two things that I kind of obsess over. If they did Locked On Oscars, I'll be the host. But sort of doing that little Venn diagram of things that I love, baseball and award shows, um, I thought it was pretty good. I've seen award shows that are off the charts great. Billy Crystal, when he used to host the Oscars, I think Jimmy Kimmel has been a terrific host of the Oscars. There have been times where the host of the Academy Awards or the Emmys has been absolutely top notch. And when you see someone do a really great job hosting an award show, I think it's fantastic. I think Roy Wood did fine. Not every comedian is necessarily a great host, but he did fine. Mookie Betts, I thought, did great. Again, we're grading on a curve. Roy Wood Jr. is one of the best comedians in the world, and Mookie Betts is not. But he showed a lot of personality, showed some pretty decent comic timing, and the show was fine. Again, it wasn't great, but it was a good first step. It was a very good first step of, okay, this is what you should be doing. Getting all the players, getting past players, present players, and some of the players were stiffs that did little bits and things like that, but get it going. Find out who the good ones are. I mean, find out who knew that Joey Votto was so damn funny. And don't always just focus on the superstars, too. I mean, for God's sakes, Bob Uecker became one of the. I mean, if you watch some of Bob Uecker's stuff when he used to appear, not just his his great scenes in Major League, his funny scenes of Mr. Belvedere and doing broadcasting, but when he would appear on Johnny Carson, he was unbelievable. But you also find out who the next Jerry Remy will be, or the next Phil Rizzuto, or Dwayne Kuiper and Mike Krukow weren't superstars, but they've turned it their phenomenal personalities. Joey Votto, his comic timing is off the charts. Brian Wilson, who was with the Giants, was absolutely hilarious. Dontrell Wills was very, very funny, and he's turned into a good host. Ortiz is very funny in a big, goofy kind of Shaq way on the roundtable shows. But find out who those people are and help give baseball a little bit of extra personality. Now, I still think baseball missed the boat on really making this something special. And that was you have to have, and work it out. If you got to work out with the Baseball Writers Association of America, go ahead. But you have to have an award show feature Manager of the Year, the Cy Young Award, the Rookie of the Year, and the MVP. Imagine having, you announce the three MVP, the nominees for the MVP of the American League are Jose Ramirez, Cleveland Guardians, Cal Raleigh, Seattle Mariners, Aaron Judge, New York Yankees. And by the way, that's when you say, Jose, I hope you enjoyed being nominated. And the razor thin, and the winner is boom. You got to have that. That will make the excitement of watching that show, I think, off the charts. The Cy Young Award goes to Paul Skeens. The Cy Young Award goes to, now there was no real drama in the National League Cy Young, but there was a lot of people who thought Garrett Crochet probably should have won the American League Cy Young Award. Who should win the Rookie of the Year? That should be part of it. Now, I believe that baseball should award them before the playoffs. But if you're going to do an award show in Vegas, and have it be a black tie affair and have it be kind of like, it doesn't feel like the Oscars yet. It feels a little bit like the Golden Globes. Fine. The Golden Globes is loosey and goosey, but put those big awards in it too. This is a good start. And by the way, there are so many terrific comedy writers out there out of work based on the way that the landscape of late night television has changed so drastically. You can handpick some of the best writers in all of America, I'm sure other countries too, to write some fabulous stuff and to work with some of the players and give them personality. I like that we're trying to turn Mookie Betts into a personality because cool, great. Some of the other, the NFL and the NBA has figured that out a lot faster than baseball. But let's get on this one. Create the show and have all the major awards in there, because do you know what? That's what we need, because it will be fun. Remember fun? And it had the right tone. I'd say I'll give it 3 out of 5 stars. Get that. The next thing you need to have is that thrill and excitement of knowing you're going to see all the awards together there. It was a good start. The fact that it was in Vegas, well, that's going to be the topic of another podcast I have coming up. But you got to give credit where credit is due. This is something I've been screaming about for years. They didn't quite do it yet, but they're getting there. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you miss the start of your game, you want to ride a hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, if you can combine your live bets into a same game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. So right now, FanDuel is giving customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head on to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the National Basketball Association. And these are interesting times to be the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Hey, on this day in baseball, this is kind of a strange on this day in baseball, but bear with me for just a moment. On this day in baseball in 1952, the St. Louis Browns officially made their move to Baltimore. And on this day in it was on this day in 1954. That's the right year. And the Browns moved after many years of absolute futility from St. Louis, became the Baltimore Orioles, and the city of St. Louis became a one-team city. And it seems so obvious that you had the one team with a great history and champions like the St. Louis Cardinals was going to be the one to have the city to themselves, and the lowly Browns, who only managed one pennant, and that one pennant was during the war when a lot of the best players were away, and they lost their one trip to the World Series to the St. Louis Cardinals. I mean, they was so obvious they were the punching bag, so they were going to leave. Except it's not always that obvious. Remember, the A's were the team with a great history and won championships in Philadelphia. They won pennants in the 1900s, the 1910s, the 1920s, the 1930s. They won World Series titles in the 10s, 20s, and 30s. And by the early 50s, they were off to Kansas City. The Phillies were the worst team in National League history. And between the first World Series of 1903 and the A's leaving town in the early 50s, the Phillies only made it to the World Series twice. They only won 2 pennants. They got swept by the Yankees in 1950, and they lost 5 to the Red Sox. They had only, in 1915, they only won 1 World Series game. And they were the punching bag. They were a laughing stock. I did a whole video on that. And yet it was the A's, with all their great history and Hall of Famers and championships, who wound up moving. And the Phillies stayed put. That almost happened in St. Louis. That almost happened. In the 1950s, it became clear that a lot of cities who had 2 teams, an American League and a National League team, could not support both teams. Populations had moved, Western expansion for major cities was growing, and the idea of putting teams more further west was becoming really appealing. Ironically, the Browns moved east, but what are you going to do? Hell, even New York had only one team at one point when both the Dodgers and the Giants left. It was just the Yankees in New York. Teams were going elsewhere. And the idea of going and getting greener, being the big team in a new city became appealing to one of the two teams in St. Louis. Now, at one point, the Browns were trying to move to Los Angeles. Los Angeles looked like it was going to be an absolute gold mine, but they had to have another team move to California. No other team seemed ready to make the big move to either San Francisco or some other city in California. So that uh, possibility was scrapped. But the Cardinals were having a lull after they got rid of Branch Rickey and he took over the Dodgers. The farm system of the Cardinals was not producing the stars they used to have. And they had a great run of winning titles in the 40s, including one against the St. Louis Browns. But after the 46 title against the Red Sox, the Cardinals' fortune started to wane. And Bill Veeck, who had owned the Cleveland Indians, that's what they were called then, and led them to their last World Series title to date in 1948, sold the Indians and bought the Browns in 1951 with the absolute intention of taking over the city and finding that lull in the Cardinals' history and taking over the hearts of the city. That's what happened in Philadelphia around the same time. The Phillies had just won the pennant, and all of a sudden the Phillies were the team of Philadelphia, and the A's were in an absolute rut, and they were the vulnerable team, and they left. This is what Veeck had in mind, to do exactly this. He took over the Browns as the Cardinals were in that lull, and he did all sorts of things for publicity. Of course, the most famous thing, he hired a dwarf named Eddie Goodell to come to have a turn at bat. But he did all sorts of weird publicity things. He had a flying saucer land on the field, and these alien guys dressed up as aliens. He had the audience, the crowd participation, where they would hold up like whether or not they should remove the pitcher. Yes, no. They did. And the other thing he did, he was trying to win over Cardinal fans, and he did all sorts of things to bring back, like, Dizzy Dean was one of the most famous and favorite Cardinals ever. And he had Dizzy Dean be the broadcaster for the Browns. Rogers Hornsby, the first great superstar of the 20th century in St. Louis, was signed to be the manager. And he brought in all these former World Series champion Cardinals, like Harry Breachin, who was a big star when they won the World Series. And everything was there to make the Browns games a carnival and have all these beloved Cardinals come to the Browns. And it looked like it was working, because the owner of the Cardinals was realizing, do you know what? We can't have two teams in this city. And the owner of the Cardinals got in trouble financially, and he put the team up for sale. And out of St. Louis, bids started to come in. And the city that did not have a major league franchise, sat up and made a great bid for the Cardinals to buy it from Fred Saig, who was the owner of the Cardinals, who was in huge financial trouble. And that was in Houston, Texas. And so in 1952 or 1953, the Cardinals looked like they were going to be sold to a Houston group. And Bill Veeck, who came sweeping in to buy the lowly Browns, looked like he was going to have St. Louis to himself. They would have been the Houston Cardinals, which was as outrageous a thought as having the Los Angeles Dodgers or the San Francisco Giants. But the Houston Cardinals was a real possibility. And it looked like it was going to happen. And then Anheuser Busch stepped in. Gussie Busch from Anheuser Busch, the brewery that gave us Budweiser in St. Louis, had piles of money, bought the Cardinals. And Veeck realized, I can't compete with Anheuser Busch. I can't do it. And the Cardinals stayed. And Veeck, realizing, well, I can't compete with them, sold the team to the group who sent them to Baltimore. If Anheuser Busch did not step up then, it was borderline guaranteed that the Cardinals would have moved to Houston, Texas, and the Browns would still be in St. Louis. Would there ever have been a team in Baltimore? I don't know, and neither do you. But the whole landscape of beloved teams of St. Louis would have included the Cardinals having this vague history in St. Louis and some great titles, but the fans of Houston would have them for their own. And I'm guessing because Houston was the top farm team for the Cardinals, and the Cardinals for years and years was the farthest team out west. So there was a lot of cities in the Midwest, the Great Plains, and I'm guessing in Houston as well, because there was no team in the South at that point. I'm sure there were a lot of Cardinal fans in Houston. I think it would have worked out amazingly well. And the Browns would be the team. And the talk of like the greatest baseball fans of the world, the people say this, that, or the other thing about St. Louis Cardinal fans. Nope, they'd be St. Louis Browns fans. That close. But did it happen? No. Do you know why? Because this bud's for you. Another team that moved in the 1950s were the Braves, who moved from Boston to Milwaukee. And of course, not long after that, they moved from Milwaukee to Atlanta, which leads us to the trivia question. Who was the first Atlanta Brave to win the MVP? Very simple question. Who was the first Atlanta Brave to win the National League Most Valuable Player? That's a trivia question. And thanks so much for making Locked On MLB your first listen of the day. And thank you for making us Locked On, the #1 sports podcasting network. Talking about Seattle wanting to have a pennant and ownership wanting to do something about it. The award show having the right idea. Now let's make it bigger, and how St. Louis was almost the Browns town forever. This has been Locked On MLB. I'm your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully.